Hello, this is FoodOffensive.com's weekly Fukushima update, where I bring you updates concerning Fukushima and the disaster and the ongoing issues with that, and some of the news that's coming out that you might not see anywhere else. And I wanted to get a few of these out real quick in the next week or so. So this next one I wanted to cover, and some of these aren't immediate ones that just came out, but this particular one's from May, and basically it's from the Alexander Higgins blog, and it says, UN ambassador, quote, "No exaggeration, fate of the world depends on Fukushima Reactor 4. And there's a whole, movement around this Reactor 4 and the warnings about it, things that could happen if another disaster were to come through, or if there was an issue with keeping the rods cool, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of concern about this. If before they can get it cleaned up and get it, safer than it is now, we might have a problem worse than we've experienced so far. And so this is the ambassador's picture here. But the article goes down and says he is joining. Is talking about the ambassador. He's joining forces with human rights groups from around the globe and calling for the UN to step in and end the crisis in Fukushima that TEPCO has planned on taking decades to resolve, after repeated warnings that even a minor earthquake could cause the spent fuel pool to collapse, which would result in a radiation release so massive it could end life on Earth. And I'll look later about comparatively, how many rods are stored in number 4, and also wanted to bring to your attention this video about the petition that's going on. You can see the link for it here that's in the article, but also wanted to show you the site here, and we'll actually go to that at the end about the petition. His article says here that, as he had previously reported, that TEPCO, there was not enough money to handle the Fukushima 4 problems, and I covered that in one of my previous videos as well. He says, the problems at Reactor 4 are the greatest short-term threat to humanity and has the potential to destroy our world, and TEPCO doesn't have the money to fix them. And that's talking about Arnie Gunderson's interview and how he said that, and I had covered that as well. His article goes on to say, documents obtained from the U.S. government through FOIA requests, being dubbed Plumegate by the alternative media, reveal the U.S. has colluded in the cover-up of the disaster as well. Now, I've been contacted by the person that actually dubbed the name Plumegate, and I don't like that they just said dubbed Plumegate by the alternative media. There's an actual person that actually came out with that first, and no one has seemed to want to give him credit for that. And so I wanted to get him on, as well as Hatrick Penry is his name on YouTube, but you can look him up on there. And I wanted to get him on in the next few updates. Hopefully, I keep running into issues with time and things getting these out, so that's coming down the line. Also, the article goes on. Now, the ambassador is joining and warning the threat could not be more grave. And it says Japan's former ambassador to Switzerland, Mr. Murata, that's who he's referring to here, is the former ambassador to Switzerland, that's saying that he has no exaggeration. The Reactor 4 is something we need to really pay attention to. It says Ambassador Murata writes to UN Secretary General, it is no exaggeration to say that the fate of Japan and the whole world depends on number 4 reactor, and he appeals for independent assessment team. It goes on to say, it seems to us that the Nuclear Security Summit was focused on the North Korea nuclear issue and on the issue of common security from a terrorist attack. We tend to get sidetracked by other issues. Obviously, a terrorist event or something going on with North Korea is obviously an issue we need to, keep an eye on. But we can't let that distract us from the other things that are going on. And it seems to be when we go to sleep on one issue, it's when something else is happening, and whether the mainstream media is not covering anything, they're only sticking to one issue, and it's a big distraction. And then we forget about everything else that's going on. And so that's what we gotta pay attention to. This the reactor number 4 is what this article is referring to. He says, if the Japanese government leaders do not recognize the risk their nation faces, how could the rest of us be persuaded of the looming disaster? And if the rest of us do not acknowledge the catastrophe we collectively face, who will be the one to act? So, we look at, a lot of us in America, we're here, we're on our own little area, we're in the greatest, freest country, ever known to man, and obviously we've lost some of that freedom over the years, but we get over here, and there's some people here, Americans, that they've never traveled, out of their state, much less their country. They fail to understand how big the world is, but then also they fail to realize how close things are with modern day travel and things, and how you can just go to another country and experience a whole new culture in just a short time. And they think, oh, well, it's no big deal. It's 5,000 miles away in Japan. It's not our problem to deal with, but we forget that this stuff is in the air, it's in the water, we've seen through tests that it's actually in our food already, and then no telling what else is coming from Japan that could be contaminated. And if we see that the Japanese government isn't really making a big deal about this, if enough people aren't making a big deal of it over there, they live there, right near it, then how do we expect our citizens to be alarmed about it? So that's part of the reason why I want to do these every week and get the word out. But the article just goes on to talk about and show the actual article that Mr. Murata sent to Ban Ki-moon, the head of the UN, and he signs it, former Japanese ambassador to Switzerland and Senegal, and executive director of the Japan Society for Global System and Ethics. And the source of that is enenews.com. And I just want to make sure there wasn't anything else I wanted to point out in the article here. Also, not just the Mr. Murata, but there was a U.S. senator. This might have actually made the news a little bit better. He went over there, Senator Wyden. He went over, and he's actually sounded an urgent alarm about the imminent nuclear disaster. And it says, after touring the devastation of the Fukushima nuclear meltdown, Senator Wyden is raising the alarm that we can no longer ignore the threat of an imminent nuclear disaster. And it goes on to talk about that particular visit, and talks about how he's generally not someone that would, not an alarmist, that what people would call an alarmist, who just says, oh, there's a disaster, the crying wolf all the time type thing. He doesn't seem like one that would do that. So it's very important that we would listen to him, and he would take his time to go over there. And this article refers to a video on YouTube as well, talking about other videos, different nuclear engineers and experts. And then, like I said, I wanted to look at here about how many tons of fuel is stored at each reactor, and this article lists those here. It says the pools at each reactor are thought to have contained the following amounts of spent fuel, according to the Mainichi Daily News. It's a Japanese newspaper. Mainichi means every day, so a daily newspaper. It says reactor number 1, 50 tons of nuclear fuel. Reactor number 2, 81 tons. Reactor number 3, 88 tons. Reactor number 4, 135 tons. Reactor number 5, 142 tons. And reactor number 6 is 151 tons. And there's also separate ground level pools that contain over 1,000 tons of fuel, and so on and so forth. Washington's blog has a visual tour of the pools. You can see how they actually work. And but number 4 has a large amount, more so than the other 3 before it, way more than number 1. Number 1 has 50, and it blew sky high. And then you got number 4, which has 3 times the amount. So it's something we really need to look at and be aware of. And so I wanted to get the word out on this article, and the fact that this UN ambassador thinks it's a grave danger, a grave risk, a Japanese citizen himself, and so he's got a lot of interest in that. There is a petition, like I said. I wanted to read a couple things here. on the petition. Basically, it says this is what Fukushima Reactor 4 building looks like, and you can see the pictures below. With exposed spent fuel pool number 4, it is predicted that an M7 earthquake or higher could crack the spent fuel pool and drain the water that cools the fuel rods. If this happens and the pool sets on fire, the radiation would be so great that workers would most likely have to leave the plant. No protective gear or machinery could withstand the high levels of radiation. This is an amount of radiation that has never before released into the atmosphere. And they say, to give you an idea, that Chernobyl had only one reactor explode, and it was buried in 30 days, but still caused about 1 million deaths over the course of 5 to 10 years in the surrounding areas and neighboring countries. So, and this isn't this reactor number 4 has way more than spent fuel in it than Chernobyl, causing a much greater risk. And you've seen the deformities and things from the Chernobyl incident. And I pointed out the fact that they haven't, they won't import food. Other places won't import food from Chernobyl yet. We're just saying, oh, no problem, go for it. And so this just goes down. The article just lists the different senators involved, the committee members, so on and so forth, and you can sign the petition. And before I run out of time here, I wanted to point out the petition. It's the environmental petition at change.org. This is the website right here. It shows number 4 reactor there, heavily damaged, exposed to some major, anything that could come through, tornado, tsunami, you name it. It's definitely a thing that we need to be aware of. So until next time, this is foodoffensive.com's weekly Fukushima update. Thank you for joining me.